Greetings, everyone. Mike Anderson from American Independent Marketing here with you this morning, joined very shortly by our Vice President, David Wayne, and our technology specialist, Aaron Cassover. We will be spending 45 or so minutes with you to take you through some latest updates with regard to the Washington State Long-Term Care Trust and the various things that are going on there. So now's a good time to go ahead and refill that coffee cup or water glass, whatever is appropriate for you at this time. Get comfortable, get settled in, and we will start at the top of the hour. Is that you, Dave?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, good. We're going to get
Can you hear
started
me?
at the top of the hour. We just did the intro. Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha, good. So we'll get started here in just a minute.
Okay. All right.
All right, it's the top of the hour. Let's get started. Good morning. Mike Anderson again here with everybody. Joined here very shortly by our Vice President at AIM, David Wayne, and our technology specialist, Aaron Cassover. As I said a minute ago, we're going to spend the next 45 or so minutes with you talking about the latest information that we've got, and things have changed a bunch with regard to the Washington State Trust, long-term care tax, all of those different pieces, parts. Some reminders to everybody before we get started. First of all, we're going to have a huge crowd today. And as such, we're going to keep everybody on lecture mode as we go through. We will push questions to the end, and we're asking you to go ahead and key them into the chat box, and we'll answer them that way rather than getting overrun trying to wrangle large numbers of folks, people speaking over each other, etc. We will be recording this, and we will post it to the AIM website a little bit later this afternoon, as is the norm for us. And our marketing team will be in touch with everybody on the call. Make sure there's any other questions that they had that may have not been addressed during the course of our get together here this morning. And we're here to help you as always. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David Wayne to kick this off for us, and we'll go from there. Dave, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Mike and Aaron, and good morning to everybody. As probably no surprise to anybody, the production is through the roof right now, and people are scrambling to find ways to provide alternatives to this trust program. And as we go further into the year, we are going to find that this is just going to wrap up to even more and more as people learn about this. And the funny thing is there's still a very large portion of the people out there that are not aware of what's going on in the state of Washington. With all the efforts that we've put in and the efforts that you guys are putting in, it's still a small segment of the 4.2 million people that know about it. But as we all know, the more we talk about it, the more others are going to be talking about it, and we're going to just see this continue to wrap up. With that being said, there's really three sides to this, maybe even a fourth side to it, but there is our side, and when I call it our side, it's the marketing side. Us that are in this business, we're trying to find alternatives for people and help them provide benefits for long-term care. There's the company side, which is a very important part of the piece of the puzzle, who really controls what is going to be allowed and how much of it is going to be allowed. And then, of course, there's the state side of it, trying to do something to preserve the Medicaid program in Washington, and also help people that may not be able to have long-term care choices because of their health and other reasons. So with that being said, we have a lot of things that have been changing and continue to change. That's with the state, and recently a lot of the carriers have. And we thought that this was a perfect time to get together with everyone again. And with the amount of people that have joined this webinar, it shows that there is this growing interest of there, and share what are changes, and to make sure that everyone's aware that this is a moving target, and we're going to continue to get more clarification from the state, some changes and updates from carriers, I'm sure, and try to keep everyone updated. One of the things I'd like to share before I start this webinar with the gentlemen is this. Our position here at AIM is a very simple part of it. Is we are trying to help people provide an alternative for what the state has come out with, this trust program. One of the things that we are trying to do with this alternative is to be as safe as we possibly can. And what I mean by that is we're not doing anything that isn't at least have a 7702 rider attached to it that meets the tax qualification of a long-term care. The other thing we're trying to do, and everyone has their choice on how they're going to do this, but we're trying to hit some certain minimums so that when the time that the state opens this up and people start sending in showing that they've got proof of a long-term care plan, that there's no real way that they're going to be able to come back and say that doesn't qualify as a long-term care. So we're doing at least a 2-year plan. That's because the state won't allow us to sell anything less than that. We're going to do at least $100 a day because that's the state program. We're going to do an inflation benefit on it, at least a minimum of 1%. These are things that we were trying to push through to everyone so that they don't do a plan and come back and find out it doesn't qualify under the state program. With that being said, that doesn't mean you guys or people can't do others, but you put people at risk, possibly at risk, that it may not qualify. So we want that clarified out of here, saying that, that's the approach that AIM is doing and trying to help people. Again, you guys all have your own choice on doing that. The last thing that I wanted to point out is that the carriers have made one of the major changes out there is if people don't keep their plans for at least 12 months, they're going to be 100% chargeback on commissions. So it's not worth your time if someone's just trying to find a way to opt out and plan on dropping these plans in the future. You want to make sure you're dealing with people that want to get an alternative, also to avoid the tax deal. But really, the plan is to keep these plans. And if you go and do a bunch of these plans and they all drop them within the first 12 months, it's going to be a big chargeback. And they're going to be very aggressive about that, the carriers are. With that being said, like I said before, there's a lot of changes, and that's why we're doing this. I'm going to turn it over to Mike and Aaron and have them go through those and keep you updated on all the changes there. So, Mike, Aaron, it's all yours.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate everything that you said. A lot of detailed information. Questions flying in fast and furious right now. We'll try to address those as we go through. So, get right to it. This is some of this is not going to be new. Some of it is going to be new. Okay. And just a little bit of a refresher, and then we will give you the updated information on this. It's important to note that there's going to be places in here where we just tell you flat out we don't know, and that doesn't mean Mike and Aaron and Dave don't know. It means that there's no guidance being provided by the state. Okay. The other thing is and we ran into this before when we did the first couple of these webinars back in March and early April. There seems to be a belief somewhere out there that something miraculous is yet going to occur this summer, and that miracle would be that the legislature would reconvene and take some sort of action, and that's not going to happen. And I'm pointing that out because what we have right now and in our proverbial deck of cards, those are the cards that we are going to have to work with. We are getting strong indications, and I think Dave touched on this before, getting strong indications that one of the very first things that's going to happen when the legislature does reconvene in January of 22 is they're going to address the idea of keeping folks who opted out, forcing them to keep their policy by virtue of an annual check-off. The mechanics of it, don't know about it, but they're going to realize very quickly that the reaction to this was stronger than they thought, and they're going to make sure that if people escaped their clutches, that they're not going to have the ability to drop the long-term care policy that they used to do that. So that gets us right to where we have what we're trying to talk about, which is giving people this long-term care policy opportunity to avoid having to pay that tax. Oh, went too fast here. Let's get back over where we want to go back. So, all right, there we go. So, trust is not a complete solution. As you can see, I'm not going to read the slides. Those of you who have been on my webinars know I'm not a slide reader when it comes to that kind of stuff. A lot of flaws in what they put together, the least of which involves portability, which is something that folks tend to count on. So you got that issue. You got the fact that right now it covers less than a third of the cost of long-term care. That's not going to get any better. And we do know, or we've been led to believe, that it will require deficiencies in 3 ADLs to be triggered. Don't have any guidance with regard to cognitive impairment. So a lot of concerns in these areas. Again, very little guidance, and we'll touch a little bit more on what there is out there in the way of guidance, but it's a lot of circular syntax, let's call it, and go forward with that. Big changes that we have seen. Okay, they did finally get that the date moved out of July, thankfully, into November, as everybody I think knows. The exemption process is starting to become a little bit clearer. ESD is frantically working to put together a plan on how they're going to do this, because in addition to doing what they normally do, which is manage unemployment, they are now going to have to deal with paperwork that will be generated by 20, perhaps even 30,000 people who have purchased long-term care in this very, very short time window. With that going on simultaneously, which Dave touched on at the beginning, you got the carriers here who, have tightened the qualifying standards and the underwriting requirements. So they have, frankly, disenfranchised a group of folks that was responding to this in a bigger way than we thought would, which was the very young folks out there. They clearly are agitated at the concept of having to pay a tax that they didn't have anything to do with the inception of. And just to put a little cherry on the top of the whipped cream on the top of our dessert here, the state has been so kind as to create a website for the WA Cares Fund, so it has an official name now. What hasn't changed along the way and these are many things where nobody knows, not just us. Nobody knows. Okay, you can see the concept that there is a required dollar amount necessary hasn't been clarified. The only guidance now is it needs to be a qualified long-term care policy, and this next part is for all of the people that weighed in about hybrids before we even started. Okay, if it's a hybrid, it has to utilize the 7702 rider as set forth by the IRS. That is the long-term care rider, as opposed to the 101G, which is the chronic illness rider. Okay. Additional to that, no guidance on workers that are aging in, college kids that are coming out of college or that are going to graduate or just did graduate or maybe will at mid-year. There's no guidance as to how they're going to be handled. No guidance about workers that maybe live in Oregon and work in Washington. No guidance about workers that are going to move to Washington to take jobs. And it's very, very sketchy yet with regard to the paperwork that's going to be necessary to actually process that opt-out. As noted before, the carriers have restricted access. Okay, beginning Friday, all applicants for all carriers with traditional long-term care have to be over the age of 40, and they have to have seen a physician in the last 24 months. That is a significant change from what we had before, and they are adding a requirement that 3% or higher level of lifetime inflation be on that policy. As Dave noted before, there will be 100% chargeback on policies that lapse out within the first year. So would highly recommend that you get your clients set up on monthly just to be sure to mitigate the damage on that for you. Okay. And the processing with the carriers, they're not making any special accommodations for Washington because they are in all the states. They're going to continue to process business as though they were not dealing with this particular situation. So what have we seen change in the landscape since we last talked in March? The website has been launched. As noted, ESD has created some documents. They have weighed in, so to speak, but frankly, they have said nothing of substance. One of those documents is 13 pages long and is supposed to be a concise explanatory statement. That's their words, not mine. And it's anything but concise. And in that document, there are at least a half dozen, maybe more instances where they remind everybody that an administrative rule cannot conflict with a statute, which is their way of saying we can't do anything about this. Okay. And then you're getting familiar with the revised code of Washington and all sorts of gibberish here. As you can see these different numbers, you'll see those utilized a lot as more information becomes available. And the important thing to note going forward for your clients, the exemption becomes effective on the first day of the quarter following ESD approving it. Just sending the paperwork in isn't sufficient. ESD has to formally approve it, and if they do that sometime in the fourth quarter, the exemption would be available right at the beginning of 2022, which is what everybody needs. If they get delayed for some reason, your clients might not have access to that opt-out paperwork until the second quarter, or they might not have access to it until January or February, which means that the state is going to collect money from them in the interim. Important to note before you try to storm the castle, that's not our rule, it's not our guideline, it's how things are setting up. Okay, a little bit more information on the exemption. We've covered some of this before. New date is in November. Definition of long-term care as set forth by the state is qualified long-term care. That is either a traditional LTC policy, the types of which that we work with you on with Mutual of Omaha, with Thrivent, and with NGL. Or if you're using a hybrid, that hybrid has to have the 7702 rider. And this was set forth, what are we looking at here? 35 years ago, when the IRS spelled all of this out as part of the work that it does. Life policies that have accelerated death benefits don't qualify. Life policies that pay out in a lump sum don't qualify. And I know there was a lot of that going on and a lot of teeth gnashing when we were together in March and April about this. Okay, this is the guidelines that the state has set forward on this. Okay, and it can't be coverage that condition benefits upon receipt of long-term care. So a lot of technical stuff, but this has been in place for a while now. Nothing new has emerged in this area. Nothing is going to change. That's very, very important to reiterate. The legislature is the only body that's positioned and empowered to do anything with this. They are not reconvening until the 1st of 2022. So nothing's going to happen in the near term. So kind of summarizing, 100% of your client, 100% of the people that you're talking to have to do one of these two things. Okay? As the Rush song says, choosing not to decide is still making a choice. Folding their arms, sitting back, and grumbling that they're not going to put that tax on me will ensure that they will get that tax put on them, and it'll put them in a position where it's going to be just about impossible to get out from underneath it, because the state doesn't have a proviso to allow you to buy long-term care after the deadline of November 1st and get out of the tax. Once they get their hooks into you, you are stuck. Okay. One of the things that has come out along the way, the inflation growth for the state plan is predicated on CPI, which is currently at 1.6%. One of the pieces of all of this that very few folks know is that on the November ballot was language, and I think you would categorize it as an initiative that required voter approval for the state to be able to invest this money somewhere and generate enough additional revenue to cover that 1.6% inflation growth on the policy. That initiative was soundly defeated by the public. It seems as though they thought maybe they were voting down the tax, and that was not the case. So now we're in a situation where, as they start to collect that money in January, February, and March of 2022, they've got no mechanism to make it grow. It's just going to sit there. So they're not going to be able to honor whatever this inflation concept that they've got. Not a good situation on top of everything else. On the traditional side, the carriers are using 3% compound, and that's guaranteed. So you're going to see a significant difference in where they're going to be 5 and 10 years down the road. There are some places, as you can see in the bottom left here, where it's going to make more sense for folks to make use of the trust and the tax, but those are fairly limited compared to the larger group of folks that we have here. And we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million, 4 million workers that are W-2 workers in the state of Washington, a bunch of folks there. So the old opportunity for what we're doing is or was the 50 to 65-year-old age band. What's happened now is that the door has been shoved open, so to speak, or dynamited open, and now all of a sudden you've got residents over the age of 40, and you got a lot of folks that are high earners in that group that are faced with this dilemma. Down here at the bottom, this at-risk population, they were never going to get into traditional long-term care. Now they at least have some opportunity. So there is something coming about as a result of this that is a positive situation, all right? But this group here is now in play. This is your opportunity to have conversations with people about this and about how it can benefit them. So your role in this transition, same as what we talked about before, but it seems as though now people have understood that waiting isn't solving anything. All it's doing is compressing the time frame that we have available to try to help folks out, all right? You're still going to guide them in determining what option is more appropriate for them than what we had before. Previously, we were able to talk to them more about price and how the price with traditional long-term care was such that it didn't make that much of a difference. It was a better deal simply because of price. Now you're going to have to talk more about value, but that's okay. We've always stressed value when we've talked about long-term care. Okay, but this is going to be a key piece right here, is why private insurance is creating more value and making more value available for them versus the state pool. Okay, and that takes us back to a slide that we talked about at some length previously, which is this isn't a traditional long-term care sale, but it's not a traditional sale now for different reasons that were in place previously. Previously, it was just about get the basics done, satisfy the client's concern about getting out from underneath the tax, okay, and taking a position against the trust because they are forced to make that decision. All right. Now, what you're going to have to talk about, as we said, is quality. Okay. There's a significant qualitative upgrade when you use traditional long-term care as opposed to the trust. And you want to access the idea of keeping the process fast simply because you're going to have to work with a lot of people. All right. So questions for you to ask when you're talking to folks. Focus on portability. There's a lot of folks that don't necessarily plan on retiring in Washington. That immediately adds a check mark into the private insurance box. Okay. Do they see their income increasing? Realistically, is it going to increase, and how often are they going to have it increase? Okay. Another potential check mark in that private insurance box. Okay. Coverage. All right. Is $36,000 going to be enough? Many folks have had some sort of a brush with or an awareness of how long-term care works by virtue of a family member. Okay. Well, now they, because of that, they've been able to see just how expensive it is. That should make it very clear for them that the $36,000 amount that's in play right now isn't anywhere close to being enough. And inflation, when they need these benefits, and we still know statistically that there are huge numbers of people who are going to be using these benefits, using some benefits at some point in time. What level of benefits are they going to have when they reach the point of needing those benefits? So that finishes my part of this. I'm going to take a second here, and I'm going to hand control off to Aaron. And Aaron is going to take us through the rest of the presentation and give everybody a look at our website, which is still there but has been enhanced. So Aaron, as they say in the Navy, you've got the con.
Okay. I just realized, Mike, that I get the fun part of the presentation because
there's a reason I went first, and that is it. So take it away.
This is the half where we talk about the game plan. And what's so cool about this, what's so amazing is suddenly, like Dave said at the beginning, there are 4.2 million prospects in Washington State. Everybody you know who has a job is a prospect and is going to be impacted. And so you don't have to go and find the people who they're going to respond to, because we're all affected. And it's such a game changer for us that it almost is like a different way of selling. So we've put together some tools. We have some resources to help you kind of make the most of this opportunity. And the game plan is pretty straightforward. Of course, this should be step 0, not step 1, is you need to be ready to sell long-term care. If you don't have the pieces in place right now, get them in place today. Make sure you're contracted with the carriers. Make sure you have all of the requirements in place so that you can start to submit apps if you don't have that done yet. Got to do it right away. Do it today. And then the second one, and this sounds sort of flip, but because everybody you know is a prospect, you need to talk to everybody you know. And so it begins with making a list of all the people who who should just be aware that this is happening. And whether or not you sell to them, you're doing them a favor by reaching out and letting them know this is coming, because it's going to hit their paycheck January 1st of next year. And if you don't let them know, it's going to be a surprise. And so make that list of your neighbors, your friends, your family, your doctor, anybody, the professionals you work with, your attorney, CPA, realtors, everybody make a list. Go through your sent folder in your email and look at everybody you've talked to in the last year, put them on a list, sit down with your spouse and brainstorm on, just, friends and contacts that you can reach out to, because you're going to want to make sure they're aware of this change and the opportunity they have to be exempt of it. We don't want to spend too much time cherry picking, but we do know that there is a sweet spot. The carriers are saying you must be over 40. So, that's a line we need to draw. We're saying 40 to 55 is, that's that spot where there's enough income, they're old enough to be able to have an app accepted, and yet it's still not going to be prohibitively expensive, so that the private insurance options, will compete well with the state's plan. So we're saying targeting 100,000 plus in income. That's a very soft line. 40 to 55, married. We know that there's lots of cost benefits to selling to a married couple, so that helps as well. And then really direct outreach. Talking to people, phone, email. I know, Mike. I don't want to steal your anecdote, but you told me that you were talking to your dentist, and he was unaware, and suddenly, he's changing his plans on long-term care because he just became aware of this. So everybody you talk to, this is a chance for you to let them know, but then using phone and email to be proactive. And then finally, when you do talk to somebody, make sure you have the habit of asking for referrals. Who else, can I talk to let them know about this bill and how they can be exempt from it? Because once they've engaged with you, once they've seen the benefit of private insurance versus the public plan, once they've, they feel like maybe they've dodged a bullet, they're going to want to go and help their friends and their family as well. And so, more than ever before, because everybody they know will be impacted, you're going to see more referrals than you've ever seen before, as long as you ask for them. So a few things that are working, we've seen several months of this being at play. Being proactive is a must. You cannot wait for the phone to ring. You cannot wait for people to come to you. You have to go out and reach out to people. They're starting to hear about it. There's lots of kind of murky messages, and so you can be that light of clarity. And by being proactive, you can make sure that they engage with you and not with somebody else, because there's going to be a scramble at some point where people don't know where to go. So they just go somewhere, and there's a good chance that it will not be you unless you're there. Cross-marketing, this is working phenomenally well. If you have a book of business of other types of customers, if you have a health insurance clients, life insurance clients, if you have a P&C business, cross-marketing is working phenomenally well. And we'll show you some tools we have to help you do this, to go reach out to your customers and take advantage of this short window. And then this last point, this calculator, which I'll show you in a second, you want to drive your contacts to, we have a comparison calculator, so they can see for themselves. Before they even talk to you, they can go and they can see the impact this bill is going to have on their paycheck, and they can compare it to private insurance options. So the calculator that we built sits on this education website, WashingtonLTCTrust.org, and there is a Pearl, which is a personalized link that's available to AIM agents that are contracted with Mutual of Omaha, where we can give you a personalized link that will track people that come to the site, and then when they request information, it routes them back to you. And I'll show you a demo of the site in a second. This site is really here. We're clear that this was built by the insurance industry to educate people on the benefits of private insurance, but we tried to position it as an informative resource to help people see in a clear way which of the two options make sense for them. And we recognize that there is a group of the population where the state trust is a godsend. And so for those people, they're going to see the benefit. For everybody else, they're going to see the benefit of private insurance. And that's going to steer them back to you if you're using our Pearl. The way that the Pearl works is we have a library of pre-written emails, and we're adding to this as the time goes on, building urgency because the window is getting smaller. And you send these out to your contacts. It can be your friends, your customers if you're cross-marketing, and it tells them about the bill. It tells them about the choice they have to make, and it links them back to our website and the calculator so they can compare their options anonymously. And then if they choose to engage, if private insurance makes more sense, if you use our Pearl, the leads get routed back to you. So when they go and request information or they request to apply for long-term care insurance, you get those leads notified back to you right away. This mechanism is working phenomenally well. It's a great way to prospect to a large group of people very quickly and get those people who are interested, having people who are ready to apply falling into your inbox, and you just go and call them and complete the application and submit it. It's kind of the best process you're going to see. I'll show you what it looks like. I'm just going to change over to my browser if I can. Okay.
Hey, real
So
quick, Aaron, while you're doing that, it's important for everybody to note that to have access to the Pearl part of this, you've got to be appointed through AIM with Mutual of Omaha. And I'm telling you that because the questions are blowing up with everybody, send me the Pearl, send me the Pearl, send me the Pearl. You have to have an approved appointment with AIM for the Mutual of Omaha product to use the Pearl. So sorry to interrupt, but
yes,
take it away.
that's key. And then you reach out to us. We'll set you up with the emails with the Pearl so you can put this to work. So this is the site, WashingtonLTCTrust.org, and you can see the navigation we've got kind of gives you some information about what the trust is and what long-term care insurance is. But the real goal here is to let people see how much the tax will cost them. And this is our calculator. So going through this is a couple things. We are about to update this because on Friday, the new requirements go into place with the carriers where you have to be 40 or above and adding 3% inflation. So today allows you to quote down to 30. That's going to change later this week. It also today has 1% inflation, but later this week it will have 3% inflation. So just know that change is coming because the carriers are requiring it. But it basically lets you go and anonymously, I'll just put in a 50-year-old, and we'll say it's a 50-year-old making $100,000. We'll do male, married, and we'll say their spouse is also 50. And just for easy numbers, we'll say also making 100,000, female. And then what we do, and you can see it's super fast, we go and compare. This is what the state trust will cost them a year, $1,160 a year. And then we do an estimation in year 10 based on 5% annual pay increases, knowing that most people are anticipating they're going to move up in their jobs, their career, and then also just with inflation, they're going to make more money 10 years from now than they are today. So you want to make sure they understand that cost is going to go up. And so the trust cost is going to go up. We compare that to private insurance. And so you can see that private insurance costs them a little more, but after year 10, it's a savings. And then we outline some of the key benefits. So, vesting after 6 years versus day one. The benefits are 36,000 versus 75, so it's more than twice the benefit, and requires staying in Washington versus portable. We'll be adding information about the inflation when that's added to the calculator. So we'll have 3% inflation versus tied to CPI, currently 1.6. It's actually not even tied to CPI. The bill says it is to be no greater than CPI. So they could choose to make inflation 0 if they want to. This is the board that's overseeing the trust. This is part of the murkiness that we're trying to figure out. So the idea here is your contacts go, they see this and they very clearly, for $240 more a year, $20 a month, $10 each a month, I double my benefits. They're available day one. And so that helps people see the value of private insurance. They then can complete this to review their costs and alternatives with a professional. This is where, when they complete this information, if you're using our Pearl, this gets routed back to you. Same with if they go to the review options screen here and complete this, or even if they go here and there are some places where they can ask a question, maybe on the contact us screen, if they submit this information. So anytime one of your customers comes to the site and then requests more information, we route that back to you so that you can follow up. Let's see if I can get the presentation back up. Okay, of course, it takes me to the first slide. So bear with me as I fast forward. Okay, so we went over the process. Our emails, you can use these. You can just copy and paste them in to send to the website with your Pearl. Your customers can go and run the calculator and see exactly how this is going to impact them. And then it routes leads back to you so that you can focus on talking to people who are ready to buy. So the consumer presentation, Mike talked about the fact that we don't want to get caught up in a very complicated, sort of building need and explaining why the long-term care costs are going to be very impactful to them, the risk of not having a plan for long-term care. All the traditional long-term care sales stuff you don't need to do because they have to make a decision. And so instead, you want to make this really quick and painless, make it a fast process for people. And so using a streamlined presentation, trying to do a call in 30 minutes or less, you can use the calculator on our website to show them their options, explain the benefits of the two choices, and then streamline the process to submit an application. And then you want to make sure you have the digital tools ready. So be ready to submit online applications, be ready to have screen sharing. So make sure you have a screen sharing platform set up. If you don't have one already, make sure you have Zoom or GoToMeeting or some other platform that you can use to screen share. So you can go straight to the online application in that call, complete it digitally so that you're not moving paperwork around. That's really going to slow things down for everybody. So keep it digital. You can track application status. You want to watch this closely. yaim.com, when you log in, you can go and look at all of your pending applications. And so keep an eye on that to make sure that your applications are moving through the process. If things are getting stuck or taking too long, we'll want to make sure we troubleshoot why so we get everybody through. We do know the carriers are treating Washington. There's no special queue for us. They're taking a first in, first out. So there's going to get to a point where there will be a log jam. And when that log jam hits, it's going to start to delay processing, and it may delay processing past November 1st, which will be a huge disappointment for people because once that date passes, you can't go back in time. So make sure you're tracking status. And then finally, remember that the AIM website, AIM phone number, gives you a single point of contact, toll-free support for all questions, help with all the carriers to make sure you have sort of it's like the bat phone to go to keep this process going so that you can be really efficient in processing as many applications as possible between now and September or so. So with that, I'll pass it back to Mike. Here's the AIM phone number. And I know, Mike, you said there's some questions coming in, so I'll let you take back the microphone.
All right, I'm back. So we've had a lot of questions coming in on a variety of different topics. Seems to center on a couple different things. So let me reiterate. For traditional long-term care, as of the end of business Friday, there will not be an option for prospects age 39 and younger. No mutual, no Thrivent, no NGL. Okay, that's come in a bunch of times. Okay, the directives on that have gone out from the carriers over the last couple of weeks. Okay, so that mutual is the last of the three to cut off access to under age 40. If you got somebody that you think is a prospect for Mutual of Omaha and they're between ages 30 and 39, you should be writing that application while you're listening to this webinar. Okay, number one. Number two, a lot of questions with regard to hybrids. You're going to want to check with whoever your upline is on a particular hybrid, okay, because there are thousands of them out there. We would certainly like to help you out if you can. Mutual of Omaha's got a product, and we're trying to get some clarification with regard to that. We hope to be able to make it available, but we want to make sure that everything will pan out correctly. We know it's got the 7702 rider, but as I said, there are hundreds of insurance companies out there that have hybrid products. You want to make absolutely certain in your mind that the product that you've got is going to satisfy the requirements that the state has put in place, and that circles back to the 7702 rider. There are different age restrictions on some of these. One America's got an age restriction at 35. Securion's got an age restriction at 40. Okay, so that makes it difficult to use the some of the bigger known, bigger name hybrids to solve this problem, because they already have that age restriction thing built in. All right, let's see what else we got here. Securion is 7702, but again, they have to be 40 or older. Let's see here. No guidance.
So Mike,
we've talked about this before. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
So a couple of things that I've been talking to the people that have been processing the business in the office, which is they're working overtime trying to get through all these apps and the business that's coming in, is from this point on, you really should be only doing the e-app, because that will make sure that you're using the correct forms, that things are getting completed and not getting hung up, and they're getting submitted. One of the things that you also might run across is, hey, I'm appointed with Mutual of Omaha, but they have a separate appointment for long-term care. So you got to make sure that you have that long-term care appointment with your Mutual of Omaha contract. And I've been talking to Mutual of Omaha, and literally at 10:59 p.m. is the last time you're going to be able to hit the submit button for an e-app that they'll accept it. They're on Central Time, so that'll be 12 o'clock their time, and they are not going to make any exceptions. So any of that business that's going at 30 to 39, you trying to rush to get it in, it should be done on the e-app. You should have all your certifications done, or it'll all get kicked out and it'll be for naught. And make sure that you're appointed on the LTC side. If you need assistance with that, get a hold of us. We'll make sure that happens as best as we can. And last but not least, I want you to think of this as not just the only thing out there right now, but think about it. If you're writing 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, that you are going to see renewals for 30, 40, maybe even 50 years down the road. So this is a bigger opportunity for you guys out there and gals out there that can go on and on and on. So definitely make sure that we are on the same page. And excuse me, I said 10:59. It's 9:59. So that would be 11:59 their time. That would be the end of it. So make sure that we are definitely, as I said before, no exceptions will be allowed. Go ahead, Mike.
Good point to make. So the cutoff time is based on Central Time. I had a really good question come in that I want to cover with everybody pertaining to the software that we maintain, the vendor software. That's a very important point to make first. The vendor software that is on the YAIM website, okay? If you are in the Washington long-term care business right now, I would not rely on that vendor software I would not rely on it to contain the restrictions that we're operating under. We would suggest strongly that you download the software for each of the different carriers and make sure that you're using their software, okay? StratDecision and iPipeline, they're not under any requirement to update and make these ongoing changes. And I'm not sure what they're doing or what they haven't done, but I'm just saying that if you want to stay in this environment, you want to be using the carrier versions of the software rather than that side-by-side vendor version. So let's see what else we got here. Again, most of the stuff centered on the timing on the age stuff, which we just covered. And one of the important things to know for the younger folks who have taken the time to get them into the system now. Once they're in the system, whether they are 21 already or 31 or 41, whatever it is, okay, whatever the age, once they're in the system, as long as they continue to keep that policy active, their opt-out rights are going to stay in place. They'll have opted out, and once the legislature does whatever it's going to do in January, where you'll end up with is they'll have an annual checkoff of some type or kind. We're certain that that's going to happen, but they're already positioned with what they need. If they haven't purchased a policy that is in their hot little hand and issued and approved prior to November 1st of this year, they are in jeopardy. The likelihood is that they are going to be paying this payroll tax for a long period of time. And as it stands today, and this was how we were answering a lot of questions previously, it's how I answer questions with agents on the phone all the time now. As it stands today, there is no mechanism to provide relief for folks who don't take the steps now to position themselves to be able to opt out. And the first thing they do with that is have a qualifying policy in their hot little hand. The second step then becomes the mechanics of going through that process with employment security. And we don't know anything about what those mechanics are going to be. I know from someone who I have a non-AIM related relationship with that it is something that is creating great consternation within the employment security rank and file employees, simply because they had this dropped into their lap by the legislature, and now here they are with a very narrow time frame to get a mechanism and a process in place, and then figure out a way to handle what could be 25 or 30,000 requests for opt-outs. So they're concerned about it from a different perspective than you and we are concerned about. Okay, so repeating, if they haven't taken the steps by the current deadline, they are going to have to deal with the tax. Okay, if they are no longer an employee for whatever reason, they still retain their opt-out right. All right, so I think that pretty much covers it. We've covered all the questions. They keep coming over and over and over. The deadline Friday, as Dave said, 9:59 p.m. That's 1 minute before midnight Central Time, 9:59 p.m. here on the West Coast. That's going to be the deadline for that. So we're going to go ahead and wrap everything up. Again, we did record this webinar. We appreciate everybody's understanding with regard to not opening up for questions. We did have a ton of questions that were pretty consistent. You will all be getting calls from the AIM marketing team yet today and tomorrow to follow up with regard to this. They'd certainly be glad to work with you to get you contracted to pick up a particular carrier, those types of things that we typically do with this. Aaron, any final comments from you?
No final comments from me. The website's ready to run, so we're here to help.
There we go. All right. Well, we understand it's different. We're doing the best we can to keep everybody updated and informed, and we'll continue to do that as the processes go forward. So thanks everybody for your time. We appreciate it very much. We will be in touch, and we're here to help. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.